They changed the course of history, brought fear and tragedy, and taught authorities how to try and prevent it from ever happening again. In our THV Extra, we take you inside the mind of an assassin, why they choose their targets, and what they teach the Secret Service. They are moments in time, moments that captured a nation, moments that changed America forever.
There was some hit in that car as well, we're not sure.
All at the hands of assassins. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.
I have a dream.
President John F. Kennedy.
The President of the United States is dead.
President Ronald Reagan survived, as did Arizona Congresswoman Gabrielle Giffords. All public figures, all targets.
None of these attacks occurred, quote, out of the blue. In no circumstance that we studied did someone, quote, snap.
Psychologist Dr. Robert Fine worked with the U.S. Secret Service on and off for 2 decades. In the 1990s, he directed the Secret Service Exceptional Case Study Project. How did this study come about? In a rare interview, his first local TV appearance in more than a decade since the study,
We tried to look quite carefully at the motives.
Dr. Fine agreed to speak to us by satellite and take us inside the mind of an assassin.
The youngest person who engaged in this behavior and was in the study was age 16. The oldest person was 73. Some were male, some were female.
83 people.
Some had gone to college.
Caught between 1949 and 1996.
A few had criminal records, many did not.
People like James Earl Ray, Lee Harvey Oswald, and John Hinckley Jr. all targeted a prominent public figure. Dr. Fine even visited 20 subjects in prisons and hospitals, including John Lennon's killer, Mark Chapman, and Sirhan Sirhan, the man who murdered Senator Robert Kennedy.
People engage in a pattern of behavior that precedes attacks.
Dr. Fine focused on their thinking and behavior in the days, weeks, and months before the assaults.
We found that while none of the subjects whom we looked at was, quote, normal, that is, many of them had serious problems, many of them were unhappy, many of them had failed in a range of work and family situations.
They saw themselves as nobodies.
Some persons attacked or tried to attack public officials because they wanted notoriety, they wanted fame. Some persons did it to bring attention to a cause. Some persons did it to get killed.
But surprisingly,
political motives were actually very rare of the American assassins, attackers, near attackers.
As for mental illness, Dr. Fine says it's not a critical factor. Organization is, and it's very rare for an attacker to communicate the threat to authorities.
I remember one person who looked at me and said quite directly, if I had sent a threat in, the Secret Service would have stopped me. I didn't want to be stopped.
Still, many subjects do communicate with those closest to them, as Arizona shooting suspect Jared Loughner apparently did.
There were people around him, including classmates and teachers, who were concerned about him, who were scared by him.
And Dr. Fine says the pattern appears to hold true before the attack in Tucson.
It certainly appears that he considered his violent action sometime before, that he made efforts to get a weapon. Apparently, he made some efforts to try to learn something about assassins and assassination from the media reports.
While the study won't stop every plot,
our findings, I think, have helped and might help in preventing these kinds of rare and awful attacks.
And who better to help arm the Secret Service than the so-called experts, says Dr. Fine. So, why'd they do it?
They said, I know that I did something really awful. I thought it was going to solve a problem. It only made things worse for everybody. If maybe I can talk with you and you can share this information, you might help a person be stopped before they do something the way I did.
Now, according to Dr. Fine, not everyone is remorseful. You can see his entire interview at today's THV.com, along with the Secret Service study on assassins. It includes stories of the attackers they interviewed. You'll also find a link to a threat assessment guide for law enforcement that's based on the findings from the Exceptional Case Study Project.